Hey, this is Zulema Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, what is a two-part story. The WBA has officially elevated Jose Armando Resendiz to full WBA super middleweight champion. Armando Resendiz 2026 is off to a great start following the retirement of former undisputed super middleweight champion Terrence Crawford. The WBA has elevated its interim titleist, Resendiz, to full champion. Crawford's decision to retire came just months after his September win over Canelo Alvarez at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Initially, the former five-weight world champion flirted with the idea of moving down in weight to chase a middleweight title. However, Crawford, at the age of 38, decided to walk away. Resendiz, the immediate beneficiary of that decision, grabbed the WBA's interim strap thanks to his upset win over former champion Caleb Plant in May of last year. Although he was viewed as a gigantic underdog, Rendezvous applied relentless pressure throughout their clash and snatched the victory. In addition to the WBA elevating Resendiz, the sanctioning body placed Bektemir Melikuziev as their number one contender. A mandatory bout between them has been ordered. However, as first reported by The Ring, Resendiz has been negotiating for a matchup with hard-hitting popular star Edgar Berlanga. The 28-year-old contender is currently ranked number 12 with the WBA. He was last in action against Hamza Shiraz on Ring 3 and was brutally stopped in 5 rounds on July 12th at the Louis Armstrong Stadium in New York. If Resendiz versus Berlanga does take place, it will fall in the first quarter of this year. Whether or not the WBA decides to give Armando grace to keep negotiating that Berlanga fight, I think, is contingent upon how far along those negotiations are, because we already saw a similar situation play out between Kubrat Pulev, Murat Gassiev, and Moses Itelma. The WBA ordered Pulev to defend his regular title against Moses, not realizing he was already enthralled in negotiations for a Gassiev fight. Seeing that those negotiations were far along, the WBA gave him amnesty, allowed him to fight Gassiev on the condition the winner fights Moses afterwards. Gassiev won the fight, now Gassiev has to fight Moses. Maybe it'll be the same thing here. If the Berlanga negotiations are far enough along that they are on the eve of finalizing that fight, maybe the WBA will give them amnesty, though I myself am not fully convinced that Edgar, of all people, wants to take a rough and tough fighter on, like Armando, right off a loss? Right off a knockout loss. You know that he's managed by Keith Connolly, the same Keith Connolly who guided Richardson Hitchens, another one of his fighters, back to Matchroom. Initially, they flirted with the idea of Richardson Hitchens moving forward as a free agent and subsequently realized this guy ain't worth enough money to try at free agency, so he took him back to Matchroom. Maybe they'll be of a similar mindset with Edgar. You put Edgar in that Resendiz fight, and Armando is gonna Edgar his Berlanga. He's gonna fuck him up. Not sure the Berlanga fight happens. The Bektemir Melikuziev fight is actually more in keeping with what we've been seeing as of late, because that would require Golden Boy and the PBC to come together to make it, like they just came together to make the Barrios versus Garcia fight. Ideally, Resendiz versus Melikuziev would happen on the undercard of that fight. No, it hasn't officially been announced. The proposed date for Garcia versus Barrios is said to be next month on the 21st, though officially they haven't announced it. I don't know what the holdup is, but they're running out of time. That is, if they want to do it on the 21st. And a Resendiz versus Melikuziev fight would be in keeping with the theme of that fight, Golden Boy versus the PBC. Armando Resendiz is now riding high, coming off a career best win and being elevated to full champion. It's the first full world title he's ever gotten his hands on. Whereas Beck the Bully, who's promoted by Golden Boy, has fallen a bit short of expectations, though remaining a skilled, powerful, and fan-friendly fighter when he's on his game. After coming in heavy and underwhelming split decision over David Stevens 2 Novembers ago, he showed his grit with a last-round knockdown of Darius Fulgrim to seal the deal in a May eliminator. That fight was way harder than it should have been for what's supposed to be an amateur standout like Bek the Bully, who was said to be the captain of the Uzbek amateur team. You're talking about Bakadir Jalilov, Shakram Giyasov, MJ Akhmadaliev. Talking about Bek the Bully, who's further evidence that the amateurs work one way and the pros work in quite another, that amateur success does not always translate into success in the pros because they're different beasts. It's been about 4 or 5 years and approximately 8 or 9 fights since Bek the Bully shock upset, knockout loss to veteran journeyman Gabe Rosado. Now, Bekdemir did avenge the loss in 2023, though not in the same fashion that Gabe got him, where Gabe knocked him out, smooth out. Bekdemir had to settle on a decision. Of course, getting knocked out like that is going to derail all of your progress, so Bekdemir has had to rebuild. But you know, the guy fought 9 times since that first Gabe Rosado fight. 9? And it's felt for a long time like this guy's just fighting just to fight. Golden Boy doesn't have a plan for him. They're just sending him out there aimlessly. The fight that he had last year with Fulgrim and the fight that he might have this one with Resendiz is the first semblance of any real direction in the career of Bekdemir Melikuziev. It's a great fight. Neither Bek the Bully or Armando are going to be challenging for Undisputed anytime soon, but it's a well-matched scrap with Fight of the Year, or maybe Fight of the Week potential, and I'm here for it. As a fight, I like the Melikuziev fight a bit better than the Berlanga fight because Berlanga at this point is really just cannon fodder for any capable super middleweight. I do relish the opportunity to see him get knocked out and get his clock cleaned. But if you want to see a fight, Melikuziev makes for more of a fight, more of an even matchup. Armando is a pressure guy in some ways, so is Bekdemir. Both guys are flawed. Both guys have glaring defensive holes, which makes for an all-action shootout. You know, sometimes it's actually the limited guys that put on the best show. Because they're really going to go for it, and they're not going to be stepping on eggshells all the while as they try. They're not going to be so careful around each other, they end up knocking out the audience and putting them to sleep instead of their opponent. Sometimes it's the limited guys that have the best fights. We gotta see what happens with Armando. I don't mind seeing him pounce on Edgar Berlanga, but I do like the Melikuziev fight a bit more. Now it's time for another installment of what is fast becoming the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail. Got another one. Another guy who didn't like my mention of how the American media was putting Deontay Wilder up on a pedestal for knocking out no-hopers and stiffs for 7 years. This guy's a regular here on this channel. I always see him complaining in the comments, though oddly enough, he can't keep from coming back. Guy who goes by the name James Everett, 776, said, "You be capping with that Wilder BS. Wilder has never been held in high regard by American or American black fans. Oh, that's bullshit. His clout in America has never reached high level as, say, like Mike, Floyd, Frazier. His clout was never high as Evander or Lennox." Yeah, you can tell this guy didn't watch Evander or Lennox, because Evander was doubted by many pundits, by many Americans. Upon his ascent from cruiser up to heavy, they were unconvinced of Evander. Lennox, they thought Evander was going to be too small. Lennox Lewis was not appreciated in his time. Not in this country. He was not appreciated in his prime because he was a Brit. And because he got knocked out before by Oliver McCall. A lot of Americans thought he had a glass jaw. Which really didn't help when he got knocked out again by Hasim Rahman. So what the fuck are you talking about? You know what they never said about Lennox? Lennox had more high-quality wins over high-quality fighters, high-quality knockouts, and they never said about Lennox what they said about Wilder. What? That he was one of the biggest punchers of all time? Like they said about Wilder, for pouncing on no-hopers, journeymen, fat cruiserweights, and stiffs for 7 years. James Everett continued, "You're the fake one operating him. He was never considered to be in the realm of great or all time. I'm regularly around novice boxing fans." Well, that's because you're a novice yourself. This is somewhat race baiting. I can still remember articles from circa 2018, 2019, 2020, up until he loses to Fury, where you have esteemed professionals, pundits, and boxing fans alike giving Deontay Wilder this massive vote of confidence, likening him to legendary punchers like Sonny Liston and George Foreman, without high-quality wins like Sonny Liston and George Foreman, dubbing him the biggest puncher of all time, or at least one of them. Were you living under a rock when that happened? Or were you hanging around all those novice boxing fans? How did you miss it? Because it's very easy for me to pull up the evidence of what I'm talking about, while it's not so easy for guys like you to rewrite history. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to pretend that the American boxing media wasn't putting Wilder on a pedestal, and that the American boxing fans weren't either. We've all seen how many content creators got behind this guy, tried to push him, tried to promote him, and the size and scale of their subscriber base and their audience, and what demographic that represented. The one you say wasn't behind Wilder. So you're a liar. I don't need you to admit it the same way that my audience doesn't actually need me to tell them, because they saw it already with their own two eyes. Guys like you have a love and hate relationship with the truth. You love to deny it, but hate to hear it. Hate to admit it. While the rest of the free world was unconvinced of Deontay Wilder, his resume, his punching power, and anything he did so far, there was only one group acting like this guy was the best thing smoking, the best thing since sliced bread. But you want to rewrite history like that didn't happen. Because in recent years, being a Deontay Wilder supporter is not as trendy as it used to be. Not after guys like me have been proven right so many times. I told you, as soon as this guy steps up, he's gonna get washed. You know it's gonna be the same thing with Errol in a few years. I know that after a while, you're gonna be hard-pressed to find anybody who's willing to admit that they supported that guy. But irrespective of who was right and who was wrong, if you were of this opinion, James, that my critiques of Deontay Wilder and those who support him are tantamount to race baiting, then why the fuck do you keep coming here? If my evaluation of Deontay is as off base as you say, why do you keep coming back to hear it? You think this is the first time that James was crying and complaining in the comment section of a video I did? It's not. It's all he ever does. And yet he keeps coming back. Like-minded individuals gravitate towards like-minded individuals, but liars gravitate towards them too, wishing to appear as if they are on the side of what is true, with no evidence to back it up. You feel race baited because I said the American media put Wilder on a pedestal? Then stop coming here to hear me. You know what he's gonna do? He's gonna leave some cockamamie comment that rationalizes why he should keep coming here and listening to me, who he says is off base. Phil race baited that I called an overrated fighter. Overrated. I've said a lot of fighters are overrated over the years, of different denominations, from different places, but I'm not going to run down an itemized list for you to cater to your sensitivities, if that's what you think. This is not the part where I cater to your baseless accusations. This is the part where I say, if that's what you think that, and fuck off. You got to accuse everybody you disagree with of being a bigot, of being a racist, then go ahead. Think that, and fuck off. You're not after objective analysis, you're after partiality. I say the same thing about a lot of fighters, and you don't cry about it. But when it's Wilder, you do? Now you're being race baited. Then stop coming here, and you won't have to be baited into anything. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Just in keeping with the theme of all things heavyweight, what involves Deontay Wilder, his old buddy Dillian Whyte eyes a fight with him and former unified champion Andy Ruiz. Both former champions are firmly on Dillian's radar as potential opponents he's never shared the ring with. Is it too late to make these fights? And is Dillian Whyte so far removed from his prime and so past his best that the both of these potential bouts are past the sell-by date? You know what? What? Not necessarily, because it's all three of these guys being past their best that actually makes these fights marketable. What? If it's Dillian Whyte versus some young up-and-comer, some unbeaten fighter who's all in their prime, riding high, and has all the makings of a champion, you know what's gonna happen to Dillian. We all do. And the same applies to Wilder, the same applies to Andy. They're all past their best. So for the next wave of heavyweights, they seem like cannon fodder. They seem like acid tests. Not legitimate contenders or world title hopefuls, though against each other. Oh, that's something else. See, you put Deontay Wilder in the ring with Dillian Whyte, it's got a different feel and a different marketing angle. Unfinished business between transatlantic fighters that needs to get settled, I think. If you did that fight in the UK, people would come out to see it.
They came out to see a past prime Amir Khan versus Kell Brook.
I think they'd come out to see a past prime Dillian Whyte versus Deontay Wilder just on the premise of the bad blood between them, the build-up at the press conferences, and who eventually wins the fight. I think they'd come out to see that. I think they'd come out to see a Ruiz fight to a lesser extent. You know that Andy ain't fought since the quote-unquote draw with Jarrell Miller, which should have been a loss on Andy's record because it really was Jarrell pressing the action, pressing the issue, and pushing Andy Ruiz back, but they scored it a draw.
In any event, Andy Ruiz is a former champion like Deontay, and Andy Ruiz is past his best like a Deontay, making him an ideal adversary for today's Dillian Whyte and what remains of his career. The real issue with Dillian targeting these guys is Usyk already beat him to the punch. It's been widely reported that Alexander Usyk will be facing Deontay Wilder in the spring. And if Wilder takes another loss at the hands of that guy, that does hurt the marketability of a Dillian Whyte fight. Dillian himself is coming off a loss.
First round knockout to Moses Italma. I think these fights are still sellable, but there's only so many losses these guys can keep taking.
People have their limits.
I think the other issue is the financing. You know, Dillian is still in it for the big bucks, and in many ways so is Deontay, so is Andy. Who would be the financier for these proposed matchups? You're going to immediately think Turkey.
Yeah. Turkey can pay for a lot of things theoretically, but that doesn't guarantee that he's going to. Dillian is a free agent. So is Wilder, so is Andy, and without a major promotional outfit behind any of these three fighters, who is supposed to be the financier? Because Turkey can't pay for everything.
Maybe he can, but he's not going to.
Fighters being realistic about the money, that's always a stumbling block. Without a big Saudi bag, a big Saudi payday, can Dillian or Deontay be realistic about the money? Can Andy?
I think the fight is marketable, depending on how you play it. Nominal guarantees to the fighters, and you can make extra off the upside, because for these fights, I think there would be one, but that's the problem with today's fighters. They want so much in the guarantee, just so much money up front. Putting on a show becomes risky, too risky.
If they're realistic, they can still make some money fighting each other, but that's the problem with these fighters. When the fuck are they realistic?
So yeah, there might still be one or two high-profile fights left out there for Dillian Whyte, but the sun is fast setting on the marketability of those fights, the possibility of those fights, to where you have to wonder what's really left for Dillian.
That if you can't get Deontay and you can't get Andy, what are you gonna do? And who can you get?
Get your ass kicked like you just did with Moses.
Yeah, but Dillian's getting on in age, and I don't think he can afford to take many more beatings like that one. We'll see what happens.